Hey everybody, I wanted to do a video today to kind of go over what we've been learning about in class. These vocabulary words are pretty tough for kids to really understand because for a lot of them, they've never been exposed to some of these words before. So understanding what it means, being able to identify it is kind of hard at first. So I wanted to do a little video just for anybody that might be confused. Ooh, sorry, I thought I had to sneeze. So I kind of want to go, these are the notes that we took in class. This is on page 23 in their notebook. We've spent 2 days on the vocabulary, and we spent today identifying those parts again. Sorry, y'all. I feel like it's going to be one of those things that it's just going to take us going over and over and over and over and over. And it'll finally eventually click. They were supposed to have a test on these vocabulary words tomorrow, but we're going to extend that till Friday. So their homework tonight is some practice on that. And then, of course, I'm going to do this video just to try to, if anybody needs a little extra help. So first of all, these words relate mainly to algebraic expressions. And algebraic expressions are like a numerical expression, except that there are variables involved. So normal numerical expression might be 5 plus 2. That's a numerical expression. Whereas an algebraic expression might be a plus 2, where you now don't just have numerals, but you also have variables, which are letters that take the place of an unknown number. In an expression like this, a could be anything. Sometimes what we're going to work on tomorrow is when they actually give us a value for a. But if there's no value given, it can be anything. That's where the word variable is derived from the word vary. It can vary. It could be 2, 5, 10, -6. It could be any integer that we can imagine. So when you see a variable, that's literally what it means. It can mean any number. When we're looking at these algebraic expressions, anytime you see a letter, that is a variable. So a coefficient, this is one of the harder ones for kids to understand. A coefficient is the number in front of a variable. So if you have an expression like 2y plus 6, the 2 and the y are side by side. So this means 2 times y is what this means. We multiply these together. When you see a number and a variable that's being multiplied together, the number that is in front of the variable is referred to as the coefficient. That's why the definition says a number multiplied by a variable. It is literally the number in front of the variable that we're multiplying it by. So anytime, like here it's 6, 14, and 8, those are all the numbers in front of the variable. And it's just the number. It's not 2y is not the coefficient, just the 2. That's kind of the mistake I've seen lately, is we want to call all of that a coefficient. Just the number is the coefficient, not the variable. Terms are your parts of an expression. Usually they're separated by addition and subtraction signs. We had one today that was just one, like 7 is a term. A is a term. If I have more than one term, I might have 7 plus m. That is 2 terms. So it could be a number, it could be a letter, or, for instance, we could have a plus 6y. This is also a term when we have a product or a quotient of a number and a letter. So in their definition, it says it could be a number, like 7. It could be a variable, like a, or it could be both, like 6y. These are terms, and they are usually separated by pluses and minuses. So if we had a 6, I've already used 6, it doesn't matter. So this particular expression would have 3 terms. This expression would have 2 terms. 7 would be a term, m would be a term. Alright, so a constant is a number that you cannot change its value. It's literally a number by itself. It stands alone. Today, like in this expression right here, 7 would be a constant. In this one, it would be 6. I've had kids all day today they get confused with constant and coefficient. Coefficient has variables, constants do not. They are all by themselves. The last couple of vocabulary words kids tend to remember because they're ones that we've had before. But a factor is something that's being multiplied by something else. So that's very common in multiplication. Kids know factors in multiplication, factor pairs. But now our factors look a little bit different because it could be, like our example a while ago, 6y. 6 is a factor, and y is a factor because they are being multiplied by each other. Same thing in the example right here on my paper, 6 times 3 plus y. These parentheses group this whole thing together. So that has to stay together. I can't bust it up. I tell the kids they're like walls. We can't bust it up. So in this particular problem, 6 is a factor. 3 plus y is a factor because they are being multiplied by each other. Now, when two things are multiplied together, they equal a product. So 6y, the whole thing is actually called a product because whenever we solve this, then we would get the answer would be a product. So factors are what we multiply together. And then, of course, we know sum is the answer to an addition problem. So anything that's being added, like 3m plus 7, that is considered a sum. A difference is anything being subtracted. A product is something being multiplied. So like 7n is a product because I'm multiplying those two things together. 7 is a factor, and n is a factor, and they are being multiplied together to give me a product. Finally, a quotient is something being divided. So that could be in a form of a fraction. B divided by 4. That's a quotient. Same thing here, 18 divided by y. So I kind of wanted to go over the homework now after we've kind of talked about these words and try to identify them in actual algebraic expressions. So for number 1, this is their homework for tonight. It says, what are the 3 terms in the expression? Remember, they could be numbers, letters, or both. So here we have 4x, 2y, 3. Those are our 3 terms in our expression. Let me see if I can get a little bit closer. So 4x is a term, 2y is a term, and 3 is a term. There are 3 terms in that expression. The variables are the letters. So the letters would be x and y, not 4x. That's not a variable. 4 is not a variable, just the x. What is the constant? The constant is the one, is the number that is alone. Okay, so we only have one number up here that's standing all by itself, and that is the 3. So it would be considered our constant. All right, down here, what is the variable in this expression? We have x is our variable. Even though we have an x squared, the x is still the variable, the letter. What is the 5 in the term 5x squared? Well, since it's being multiplied by the variable, it is actually a coefficient. It is also a factor, because it is being multiplied by x squared. Some things in the expression can be more than 1. What is the 2 in the term 5x squared? We know that those powers are called exponents. All right, number 7, how could y squared be written? Well, just like if this was a number like 5 squared, we could write 5 times 5. Well, y squared can be written y times y. And the kids and I have had to talk about this before, that we are going to be moving away from using the x as a time sign because it looks like a variable now. So you'll see us using dots, or we might write it side by side like that. Okay, either way is fine. What does the term xy mean? Well, since they are side by side, this means x times y. That means multiply. Can you combine all the x's and y's in this expression? The answer to that would be no, and we really haven't gotten here yet. I just kind of wanted the kids to be thinking about it. But the answer would be no, because they represent different numbers. Okay? Alright, so one last thing before, this is pretty much their homework, but I just want to kind of clarify. We might do a few more. Y'all hang on just a second. Okay, so just one more time, I just want to maybe do another example to kind of just maybe clarify it just one more time. So let's say I had, let's say I had 4x minus 3 plus m. Okay, that's my algebraic expression. Okay, in this expression, my variables would be x and m, just the letters. My constant would be 3, or in this case, technically, if I add the opposite, it would be a negative 3, a minus 3. Okay, coefficients. So if I look, I only have two variables, x and m. X and m, so that's the only place I can have a coefficient. In front of my x is a 4. That is my coefficient, 4. Now, we've talked to the kids about this today specifically. In front of this m, the kids like to say there's nothing there. But if there was nothing there and it was a 0, 0 times m would equal 0, not m. So always, if there is a variable by itself, we say there is an invisible 1 there, because 1 times m would just be an m. It's very redundant for us to write, like we wrote 4 x's. It'd be redundant to write 1m. So we don't write it in an algebraic expression, but there's always understood to be an invisible 1 in front of a variable that doesn't have a coefficient, like an actual number. So actually, the coefficients are 4 and 1. Okay? There are if we were asking how many terms are there, there is 1, 2, 3 terms. We would really look in between, and you could just have one term. You know, a single letter by itself is considered a term, but it's when we start adding and subtracting stuff that we end up with multiple terms. What else? Oh, so we talked about how 4 is a coefficient. Four is also a factor because it is being multiplied times the x, which means x is also a factor because they are being multiplied times each other. Lastly, 4x is a product, because if I were to solve, if I knew what x was and I would solve 4 times x, the answer would be a product because I'm multiplying them together. So this is just kind of how you work through looking at the expression and kind of picking it apart one piece at a time. It is brand new, and I know that. And the kids today, some are like catching on and some are like really struggling. So I wanted to put this out there for you. If you need some additional help, feel free to watch it. Just make sure that you're going over the vocabulary, study your Quizlet, make you some cards if you want to, and just make sure you're doing everything you can to help yourself, okay? I hope you guys have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.